Good morning, and can I just start by saying what an absolutely stunningly beautiful day it is. I looked out of the window this morning and it looked absolutely freezing, so I got myself decked out. I mean, this jacket is a pure goose down jacket that I used when I used to go wild camping on top of the fells in about 15 degrees below, and it's actually quite pleasant out here, so I'm absolutely boiling. But it is absolutely beautiful. The sun is out, and again, there's no wind. We're not having any wind at the moment, and it's just no breeze or anything. Everything is perfectly still, nothing's moving. It's just the most stunningly beautiful autumn going on winter day, and we're happy and Molly's happy, and it's absolutely fabulous. Now the nights are drawing in, aren't they? It's getting cold, it's getting dark very early. You've got an alternative. What you can do, you get home, you shut yourself away, put the television on, put the kettle on, sit there and stare at a screen that's just electronic signals punching out vision and noise and whatever information it wants to give you, and sit there. And if that's what you want, that's great. But we have started getting our hobbies out. Now it's funny really, I've started doing hobbies more in winter than any other time of the year, when the dark nights come in. And I think that's because we are so busy during the day, and taking advantage of any sunlight that we get and any warmth we can get on our backs. But in the dark nights, it's time to get the knitting out. Now I've got my knitting out. I couldn't find my circular needles, so I've had to order some new ones. I had a pair of Knit Pro Symphony. It cost me over £100. I can't find them. I think I must have left them at somebody's house. Anyway, I've got some cheap ones, and it was the worst thing I could do, because they're wooden and they're splintering at the end, and I can hardly use them. So I've ordered some more, and I'm going to go to the local wool shop this afternoon and have a look what they've got, because I do need stuff. I've lost a tapestry needle somewhere, so I need that as well. But I've got that out, and I love doing that. And what I do, funny, with my hobbies, I kind of set a scenario for each one. When I'm knitting, turn the telly off, may put a bit of music on, may sit in silence, may put an audio book on or a podcast or something like that, just quietly, and sit there in peace. But it has to be the right kind of scenario. I read a lot. I've got some books that I keep. A couple of people on here have suggested books, so I've got them to read over the winter months. The Poet of Tolstoy Park and Walden. Why haven't I read Walden? I've been meaning to read that for about the last 50 years. But when I read, again, it's another scenario. I've got a very high back, very rigid armchair in the living room that my mum bought me about 2 years ago. And it's beautiful, but the only time I use it is when I read, because I sit and it's good and it's comfortable. It makes you sit upright. And it's like, that's where I read. That's the environment I read in. And I set little scenarios for pastimes and hobbies, like a theatre set. And it's great and it's quiet, and there's no bombardment coming in. I mean, with crafting, obviously there has to be a certain amount of light, so you can't just sit by candlelight. But still, I can sit by candlelight any time I want to, but still sitting there in the quiet, in the peace. I'll knit. I'll get my jewellery out. I make jewellery out of rocks and things like that. And I'll get those out and work on those. And I do it for as long as I want to, for as long as it takes. And I may switch something else. I'm making a hat at the moment, but I'm the clumsiest knitter going. I'm absolutely rubbish, as this hat and this scarf bear testament to. But it doesn't matter, because I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying to win any competitions. I'm just doing it, and it's full of mistakes. And I'm dropping stitches and gaining stitches all the time. I'm like compensating. But you can't really tell, and I'm quite happy. And it gives me sitting there knitting. Just such a peaceful pastime. So I'm gonna get the long circular needles out and make myself another scarf, I think. I make simple things. I have made sweaters and gloves in the past, but I make simple things, hats, scarves, shawls, things like that, because I'm not doing it for any other reason than it brings me peace, and it brings me quiet, and it brings me happiness, it brings me something constructive to do on these dark, cold nights. Get my musical instruments out. I've got a studio upstairs in the back bedroom, full of instruments. I play lots of instruments. I play none of them that well, but I'll get my drums out, I'll get my handpan out and play that, because that is something that I can play quite well. And I will sit, and I may play it for 5 minutes. I may play it for 5 hours. I may play it for 5 days. I play it for the right amount of time. And that's what we all do with hobbies. We do them for the right amount of time, because it's all about taking pressure off, not putting pressure on. I can't count the number of hobbies that I've got, because they're changing all the time, because things will fire your imagination. I've tried doing crochet, but I just can't get my head around it for some reason, but I'm going to try it again. There's all sorts of things I can do. I used to do lots of charcoal drawing. I did watercolour, but I'm not very good at watercolour. I just can't. My dad was a great watercolour artist, but I just can't get my head around it. So I will pick up the charcoals again at some point, and then I will put them down, and I will pick something else up. And this is kind of a must for me, and I think it's a must for most people. I think it's such a useful thing to do for your peace of mind, for your health, for your mental health, just to get you away from this crazy world. Hobbies are absolutely fabulous. Who needs television? You watch television, like I say, it's just bright lights, electronic signals, and people telling you things that are going to influence you. And if it's not something that's going to influence you, then it's going to be bloody Strictly Come Dancing on Ice while you bake something, or something like that, which really isn't up my street, to tell you the truth. Maybe up yours, and that's up to you, and it's all well and good, but it's not up mine. And I just like sitting. I was doing it last night. I was sitting and knitting last night, and I almost have to teach myself again how to do it, because I'm only doing it over the winter months, but you soon get it back very, very quickly. And I sat there for hours, and it was like, okay, I'll put this down in another 5 minutes, but you don't, do you? You carry on, and before I knew it, it was time. It was bedtime. It was time to take Molly for a last walk. But I always felt like I'd spent a constructive evening. And isn't that a great thing? I think there is something about hobbies, the constructive. By the very definition, they are constructive, and everybody likes. I think most people like doing things that are constructive. I like having something to look at the end of a task, at the end of a hobby. I like something to be able to feel, to be able to keep, to be able to take out, to be able to use, to be able to wear. I like the art of reading, because reading, it's just, reading for me is a lot of things. I've always been a great lover of the English language, and so reading expands my vocabulary. I learn new words, I learn new facts, I learn how to express my feelings better, and I think that is so important. I think a lot of people do get into kind of trouble because they can't express themselves verbally. And so the frustrations build up and this turns into lashing out. And I think reading just lets you discuss things, and it's great being able to discuss things with people. And I find when I do discuss things with people, when I'm just chatting and you get into a subject, the actual joy of just having an invigorating conversation with somebody, because you know that whatever feeling you have got, you are going to be able to express it exactly how you want to express it. That's great. Reading. I play music. I record music. I've got a Bandcamp channel, nigelboydell.bandcamp.com, and it's very simple music. It's a lot of percussion, looping, and I just do it for my enjoyment. But I mean, the musical instruments I've got are way too many. I've got like electric cellos, electric violins, I've got loads and loads of different shaman drums and bowrons and keyboards and mixers and loopers and all sorts of things that I've just accumulated over my long life. But I love it because it's constructive, because it's creative. I'm creating something, and I think we all need to create, except we don't need to create chaos. We need to create things that bring you joy, things that bring other people joy. And it's all good and it's all peace, and it all keeps you away from the media and from social media. It keeps you alone but not lonely. A lot of people don't like the idea of being alone. They see it as some kind of, I think they think being alone makes you vulnerable, and being alone is synonymous with being lonely, which it isn't by any stretch of the imagination. Being alone can make you more at one with what's around you than being in any huge crowd, where in fact you can feel isolated and lonely and vulnerable. I've never liked big crowds. I've never liked clubs. I always felt intimidated. And I've been like this all my life. I'm not weak. I'd like to avoid crowds and noise and conflict. And hobbies do that. And anything can be a hobby. Anything. Reading, knitting, making jewellery, sitting, meditating, cooking. What a fantastic hobby, cooking. I know people who cook and they struggle if they've got a recipe and it's like they've not got an ingredient, or they do something different. They're panicking. Oh, the recipe says this, and I say to them, that recipe is just somebody else's idea of what they like it to taste like. I said it's a guideline. You do your own thing. You be creative. Creating with food. Experiment. Most of the time, the only time you will make something with food and not be able to use it or have to throw it away, which is cardinal sin anyway, is probably in the cooking time, if you burn something. So if you're careful with that, anything you make is edible. Of course it is. I make lots and lots of soups because they're easy, but it's just a nice process. I go in the kitchen, I put the radio on, I pour myself a glass of wine and I cook, and it can take hours. But I'm like at peace and happy. And it's so important. Hobbies are so important. Don't just sit in front of the bloody television like everybody else. Get a hobby, especially in those cold winter months where you can make a hot chocolate or have a nice good whiskey. And put that at the side here. Light some candles. But you'll have your little crafting lamp on perhaps. But once you've finished, you can turn that off. The room's dark, and the room's quiet, and the room's peaceful. And when you've been actually doing something constructive for a while, that's something like knitting, which is repetitive, crocheting, which is repetitive, and then you've got yourself, you're almost in a meditative state because things you're doing become automatic, and you put that down and you sit, and that's when you get the most pleasure and value out of quiet, out of peace and quiet. So do it. Pick up that hobby. Now that the dark nights are coming in, at least in this hemisphere, pick up that hobby. Pick up a new one. There's nothing greater than learning, is there? There's nothing greater than starting a hobby, struggling with it, but persisting with it, because you know when you look round and see other people can do it, you know that they struggled just like you did when they began, and you persist, and then it becomes something you really, really value. Get a hobby. Sit in the quiet, sit in the peace. Do your mind a favour. We're at Molly's bench now. This is where we sit. And we've told you before, shown you before. This is where we sit. I've brought a plastic bag with me to put over it because it's wet. But this is where we'll sit now and gaze over this for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just until we're ready to carry on our walk. I hope the weather's as fine where you are as it is here. We shall see you on the flip. Peace and love.